Are you paying attention to inflation? Warren Buffett says inflation has begun to accelerate. We're seeing it now. Housing prices are skyrocketing. Lumber is soaring. Gas, food, and energy prices are going through the roof. And look how a mere 3% inflation rate would affect your savings. If you had $100,000 in just 10 years, nearly $27,000 would simply vanish, more than a quarter of your savings. How can you protect your hard-earned dollars? Here's what author and former Wall Street analyst John Rubino had to say in an interview with Kevin DeMeritt, founder of Lear Capital.
Deflation, stagflation, inflation. There's a lot of discussion out there about what is coming next, but I think a lot of people really do not understand, the definitions of those three, or even what's coming.
Well, I think when you take on too much debt, that is deflationary, because a mountain of bad debt that wants to default slows down the economy and pushes prices down. But what is inflationary is the response of governments and central banks to the deflationary impact of a debt crisis. And what they're doing is creating really insane amounts of new money and pushing interest rates to historically unprecedentedly low levels. And that's inflationary. So you've got these two big forces out there that are kind of pushing against each other right now. And they're both immense, but one is finite, the amount of bad debt that's out there. And one is potentially infinite, the amount of money that central banks can create to combat deflation. So it's highly likely that inflation will win out in the end, because it's just play money for these central banks. They can type in $1 trillion, press send, and JP Morgan Chase's balance sheet gets bigger by $1 trillion. And if $1 trillion doesn't work, they can make it 5 trillion, or they can make it 10 trillion. There's no end to the amount of new currency that they can dump into the banking system, which means there's no end to the amount of inflation, that is currency depreciation and higher prices, that they can engineer. We can't know the timing exactly, but we know that the policies now in place are going to lead us to this situation in which nobody wants to hold dollars, nobody wants to hold euros, nobody wants to hold yen, and they are stampeding into real assets to get away from this process of never-ending inflation.
Did you know since the year 2000, precious metals beat inflation and outperformed stocks? Don't let inflation negatively impact your savings. Download your free copy of the Inflation Report at learcapital.com.